just a few days ago, there has been an unprecedented terror attack in Pahalgam in JNK, in Jammu and Kashmir. I use the word unprecedented very consciously, but very responsibly and carefully. I don't have much understanding of Kashmir and the problems there, but from what I've heard and from people I consider very reliable and knowledgeable in this subject and in that geography, mostly Barkha Dutt's shows, I believe that until this latest attack, there was a tacit understanding that places and spaces within JNK that are tourist strongholds and very popular for tourists to visit, whether they be domestic or foreign tourists, will not be impacted, touched, and affected by insurgency and by terrorist activities. And because that very, very significant red line and understanding has been breached and breached very, very badly and severely, is why I am calling this unprecedented, because this attack has had happened in a sort of adventure park kind of thing in the Pahalgam region, an area that is very difficult to access, an area that is very mountainous, and the sheer number of domestic tourists that have been targeted, lost their lives, and are critical at this point, and stories coming in from pretty much across the country of their homes and families and funerals and bereavement is absolutely horrifying and shocking. And this is not a political platform or show, but we felt it was very, very important to use this time to investigate a little bit in terms of the psychological impact and the very psychology that surrounds terrorism and people impacted by it. And therefore, this is a very special edition of Talk Therapy brought to you by Driveway Devi. And we're calling this session Terror Trauma. I'm Karthik on behalf of Driveway Devi, and joining us to enumerate and delve into these very, very significant points is psychologist Khushi Kumar, who has been doing lots of work with us. We're very lucky to have her at incredibly short notice. She is the founder of Khushiyan Clinic, which I am very proud is based out of Jaipur. And I'm extremely grateful that she's here, because we all, I feel, need to do our bit as citizens of India and unite and present a counter narrative to what seems to be ostensibly the aim of the perpetrators, which is to divide us on the basis of religion and community. So, Khushi, thank you very, very much and welcome to this extremely important conversation.
Thank you, Karthik. I'm honored to be here today to hold space with you in the aftermath of this collective tragedy that we've gone through as a nation, as a community. And I would also like to add that I am a trauma therapist as well. I do trauma informed work. I follow humanistic, psychodynamic, and narrative approaches to healing and supporting individuals and communities in finding resilience after emotional ruptures. Today, we come together carrying heavy hearts with the recent attack in Kashmir that has left all of us with deep wounds, not just in the families who have lost their loved ones, but in all of us as a nation. It is a moment that shakes us to our core, testing not just our resilience, but our very belief in the safety of our world that we live in. And Again, I'm very, very honored to be here today, Karthik.
You mentioned such a critical word, particularly in the context that we are talking in, which is resilience, because I think it's fair to say, and it's common knowledge, that the people of Jammu and Kashmir, for now decades and generations, have endured the kind of um, trauma as a result and direct consequence of persistent terrorism that perhaps few groups of people anywhere in the world have had to. Um, might we begin by you sharing your thoughts on a collective and when they have to go through this sort of experience?
So, there has been a lot of work that has been done on the concept of collective consciousness and how trauma impacts us. Especially in moments like these, we also experience what many sociologists and psychologists call collective consciousness. Our emotions, memories, and sense of meanings are not isolated, they are collective. They are a part of vast, invisible web that connects all of us together. So, in this particular instance, it is India as a country that holds us all together and connects us all together. So, when violence strikes, it doesn't only harm the individuals; it ruptures the collective soul of people. So, there's this writer called Khushwant Singh who has captured this beautifully when he wrote about the partition, and I'm quoting him right now. The quote is: "It is not the death of one that haunts us, it is the knowledge that our common humanity can be so easily torn apart." His work is inspired by his experiences that he has gone through when the partition took place. This is why, even if we were not physically present in Kashmir at the time, we feel personally shaken. Terror attacks the emotional fabric that we all have shared. And again, I'm quoting another artist. He's called Sadat Hassan Manto. He chronicled some of the darkest human moments during partition, showed us again and again that even horror, there is fierce humanity trying to survive. And there's this quote uh, that in which he says, "In every face there is a story, sometimes of love, sometimes of horror, but always of humanity." And it is this humanity that is actually the collective consciousness that we all have and experience. And today we carry forward this witnessing. We acknowledge that terror hurts us all across states, communities, every imaginary line we draw between each other. But it is this collective consciousness of humanity that is holding us together.
Uh,
Further,
yeah.
I'd like to add on there are thinkers like Kai Erikson who tell us that when such violence happens, it not only changes how we understand safety and belonging, it also shifts public rituals, community behaviors, even national narratives, like it is happening right now, this very moment. And trauma becomes a part of our cultural memory, which will be further passed down to our future generations. That is why tending to this trauma is not just about this particular moment. It's not about Pahalgam. It's not about 2611. It's about tending to this trauma in not just this moment, but uh, for the future generations that are going to carry it down. It is about safeguarding the emotional future of who we are as a society. And that is exactly what terrorism aims to destroy.
You've said some very, very moving and important things. I want to extend what you said towards the end because it connects beautifully and directly with what I was going to say next in any case, which is future. Now, I would love for us to examine and solicit your views on two things. I'm trying to be practical and pragmatic in what is an extremely distressing situation when a collective is hurt and hurt constantly, we hear this narrative all the time that how do we revive, resurrect JNK? And if a people has been hurt so consistently, is there not a tendency or possibility that a significant portion of that community, particularly the younger people, will want to shift out of that geography in the first place? And then it automatically begs the question that who's going to be there to resurrect it?
Hmm.
So that's one thought. And very quickly, the second one, because I'm extremely forgetful. The second is again a tendency that is commonplace, which is because it impacts each of us so deeply, so emotionally. It is also fairly easy for that deep impact to quickly manifest into a very jingoistic a sort of outward way, um, and that kind of passionate, although perhaps a touch misguided, a feeling can then lead to any number of missteps.
Yes. So, coming back to the first point, I would like to answer this through what happens inside us when we are faced with terror and trauma. Again, coming back to the point, terrorism is not just something that causes physical harm, it seeks to create this fear, this confusion, helplessness, emotional weapons that fracture the very foundation of trust and safety that we live by. So that is why this thought of leaving the very soil that you were born on, so that you can safeguard yourselves, your future generations, you can change the quality of life that you are living in, removing yourself from continuously living in survival mode.
Hmm.
And that is what terror and trauma does to a person. They convert their daily life into survival mode. And it is not easy to live every single day in survival.
Hmm.
So that is where this thought, this ideation of, running away, escaping, which is
And just to quickly, Khushi, jump in, would it be correct to say that, in other words, this fight or flight
yes,
sort of
coming to that.
existence, and it can really sort of wreck an individual and so many facets, the nervous system, etc., etc.
Yes, of course, it truly can. There is psychological research that has been done, and I time and again go back to these authors. They are called Judith Herman and Bissell van der Kolk. They have done intensive research on psychological trauma. So they define what shows after an attack, what people mostly experience. The first is hypervigilance, the feeling of constantly feeling unsafe. So the survival mode comes in this one. The second is emotional numbing, feeling nothing at all. So you don't feel indifferent.
Which
So
I'm
when
guessing is a defense.
it is a defense, yes. So when we hear news about murders or rapes or terror attacks, even now, I have seen a lot of people, they've just become numb to terror attacks as well. And they don't feel anything at all. Their answer to it is, हाँ ये सब तो होता रहता है. This is something very common. It keeps happening, especially with, with a worldview where there is already war going on in parts of the world. And the news must have become very common. And that is why this emotional numbing and the feeling of nothingness is coming in. The third is intrusive thoughts and nightmares of uh, can be triggered. So people who have gone through previous terror attacks like 26/11, now Pahalgam, and 93 bombings in India. These this news itself can act as a trigger. And the fact that there are a lot of images that are available on the internet, on the news, being freely floated, can trigger these intrusive thoughts and nightmares into people. And the fourth point is it's a mixture of emotions that people feel. Anger, of course, is one that is seen amongst as an aftermath of such an experience. There's helplessness, there's survivor's guilt that is present, and these are very, very normal human reactions to a very abnormal event that has taken place, um, which is very traumatic, also, of course. So, if any one of us, or if we as a community are having these reactions, these are not overreactions. These are feelings of rage, fear, sadness, and numbness, which are absolutely all right. And this is a way and response how the human nervous system works and would respond to such an abnormal event. And
Can I quickly come in here?
yes,
Are you going to add something to this part itself? So let's do that first.
okay. So I no, I'm not adding anything to that.
Okay, so before we move on to this jingoism thing that I had mentioned, let's just park that for a second because there's an allied thought that I had. Now, one can understand the paranoia that you refer to. One can understand, if I may call it that, the PTSD and all of that which happens. Now, there are also, in specific reference to the Pahalgam incident, like and you said, there are lots of videos that are doing the rounds. One that is especially personally disturbing to me is of a relatively young boy from Gujarat who lost his father in front of his eyes on the eve of the latter's birthday. And there was a Kashmiri Muslim who claimed that boy, to be his son to the terrorists, and it was therefore able to save him. And now this boy is back home, but he has been addressing the media directly and talking about things such as the Hindu Muslim community, etc. I know this is perhaps an unfair question, but when a individual is that age and stage, this boy must be what, 10, 11, 9, and has physically witnessed the killing, the shooting down of his father in front of him, and is now dealing with the entire aftermath. Are there any unique situations and distress that he is likely to face as he grows older? And is it even possible that there will come a point, with the assumption that these things are addressed clinically and professionally, that he'll ever be rid of that trauma?
So, Karthik, one of that's how beautiful that the human body works. One of the beautiful things about it and about our consciousness is that it aims to repress the very traumatic tragedies that we have gone through. So he's 10, 11 years of age. Of course, he is going to remember for the next 15 days, 30 days. But there is a huge chance that after 3 months, he may not even remember how it took place. There will be gaps in his consciousness. It will be repressed down to the unconscious. And as as and when he grows up, and there is a trigger, there is a news that comes in that shooting has taken place, or there's been a terror attack, there will be glimpses of this memory that will shoot up from his unconscious to his conscious. And that in itself will cause him a lot of anxiety and trauma because he's reliving it. And of course, he will require clinical help, he will require therapy, he will need to address it in a more mature manner because he's 10, he's 11 years of age. He may remember parts, he may remember who helped him, he may want to believe in humanity, but there will be that mistrust that is what terror aims to do. So sadly, this is something that he will carry on, and he will need to figure out, because every individual figures their own way out as to how they want to address and deal with their trauma. But because he's young, there is a huge chance that it will get repressed.
When we adults experience loss and grief, we often hear this thing ki, oh, there was a lot of guilt because I forgot the deceased voice, I
Yeah.
forgot what he or she looked like, sounded like, things like that. Do you think that this boy is even evolved enough to experience that kind of guilt when you say that there are chances he may even forget what happened 15 days, a month hence?
No, I don't. Because this vocabulary, these kind of emotions, that level of maturity is absent at the age of 10 and 11.
Hmm, hmm.
There will be a lot of shock, I feel, that will be present at the boy's part. But again, coming back to the fact that he's 10 years old, he's 11 years old, there may be an absence of survivor's guilt. There may be an absence.
Let's go then to what I had referenced earlier, which is the sort of misinterpretation and poor manifestations of this wave of emotion and heightened, thing that we are all experiencing, including the government.
So, from a psychological lens, jingoism often arises when there is collective trauma, which makes people feel helpless and violated. And there is this need to restore that sense of power, pride, and control that was instilled, or being carried forward before this traumatic event took place. So this rage is trying to seek an external outlet, often targeting groups or nations uh, who they see as the other, right? So this is over here there are it's not just one, it's not just all the Muslim nations that we are trying to target. It's this one neighbor that the story time and again comes back to, because again the story of two nations began in 1947, right? There is, no matter how much we try to deny, there is a huge history we have with Pakistan. It was a part of our, it, both the countries were one, and now there are two countries that were birthed after partition. And the entire trauma of partition is triggered when such events take place, when 26/11 takes place, when Uri takes place, when Pahalgam takes place. So there's a history that we roll back into. The history of Jammu and Kashmir itself, and how there was ceasefire declared in 47. So that again, coming back to the collective consciousness of not just one nation but of both the nations. And this is where the rage of both the nations is trying to seek that external outlet. And we may Now I'd like to talk about the dangers of jingoism that uh, is present. And the first part is that it oversimplifies complex reality that is present. There's a lot of history again. We all as Indians, we all are people who are Pakistanis. Everyone knows that there is a lot of history. We have all studied it in school. But Jingoism tries to oversimplify this complex reality that we live in into us versus them. That's it. That is the cause of Jingoism, that there is an us and there is a them. Now, this fuels the cycles of hatred, revenge, and further violence. And Jingoism is not just being used by either of the nations, it's being used by both. And it is also a reaction that takes place after as an aftermath of such an event. It suppresses the critical thinking, our labeling any dissent or nuance as unpatriotic. So if someone is there who is, and there have been cases in the Pahalgam instance as well, where people have stated that Kashmiris who reside there are tourist guide, or the the horse rider that was there present. They helped us, like in the story you shared. There is a Muslim who helped us, but as a country, we are not focusing on that. Why? Because the ideation of Jingoism is more
on divided lines. That's the story.
yeah. It's again us versus them. The divide and rule is coming, and Jingoism fractures societies internally by turning suspicion inwards against marginalized groups. And there are people who are talking that maybe in an Indo-Pak war is at play. But I am personally more concerned about a civil war that may take place. To be, that's just my viewpoint, and I may be overthinking it. But it is a concern that has been there. And this entire thought around Jingoism, it hinders the true healing that needs to take place. Why? Because it's focusing on retaliation and not restoration. And again, going back to
So it's
Khushwant
almost
Singh.
like a negative coping mechanism.
Yes, it is a negative coping mechanism. I'd like to quote again Khushwant Singh and Manto both. So this quote is by Khushwant Singh, where he's warning us against this entire topic of jingoism, where he beautifully says this, and I quote him: blind nationalism has been the cause of much tragedy in history. It has destroyed empires and communities alike. And Manto too refused to let partition's horrors be seen as victories for any side. He showed how violence erases humanity, no matter the flag under which it is coming. So when we read about Manto's stories that are there, that he's written, they don't focus on India and Pakistan. It doesn't focus on the Hindu. It doesn't focus on the Muslim. It focuses on how violence erases humanity. And then, by in order to end this topic, I want there to be a call for conscious patriotism that needs to be present. Of course, there is grief. Of course, there is collective pain that we are all going through. And what we need at this time is conscious patriotism and not jingoism. We all love
But
this
I mean,
country.
I'm glad you're qualifying that by saying conscious patriotism, because to a large number of people, the interpretation of patriotism is jingoism.
Yes. So conscious patriotism helps us. We all love this country deeply, but conscious patriotism will not demonize others blindly, honors the fallen without glorifying endless cycles of violence. It also holds leaders accountable without conflating criticism with betrayal. So there is a difference. There is criticism to the leaders, whoever are present or accountable, and not in a form of betrayal that you've betrayed this country. No, that will again lead to no restoration. Conscious patriotism also believes that the real strength is in resilience, compassion, and justice. Patriotism itself is not a war cry, it is a commitment to making one's country more just, humane, and whole. So that's
That's
what I
very
have.
well explained. Of course, I mean this is a very complex issue. I've been watching broadcasts, and there's as is understandable, I suppose. The political establishment seems to have one view. The military establishment will have a slight, quite different view. So all that is there. Last two things I wish to put on the table very quickly, and in fact only comment on them if there is a point of differentiation or any kind of uniqueness, since you've already spoken about impact. Two segments really. One is the armed forces personnel who lose their lives and are martyred in these kinds of encounters, and impact on their families. Could it, for example, lead to disillusionment where they would never ever consider enrolling anybody else from the family into the forces, thereby also in an unconscious way, perhaps a little bit of their patriotic fervor reducing. And the second segment is of people is um, the immediate civilian families of people who've lost their lives. Uh, Again, would there be, for example, a chance where relatively young people might consider, rebooting their lives in the sense of starting a new family, getting remarried, things like that?
So before moving on to these two topics, there's this one quote that is coming to mind. It's by Tagore, and he quotes, "Patriotism cannot be a final spiritual shelter. My refuge is humanity." So that is one afterthought that I had, and I wanted to convey it. Coming back to the armed forces view, and see, as a unit, as being part of the armed forces, they are collectively trained to sacrifice their lives in the name of our nation. And that is something that they take a lot of pride in.
True.
And that is something that they start learning from a very young age. And that's what they carry with themselves.
But I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. My point being that to me, that they sounds like the people who are enrolled themselves. I wonder if that same sentiment to that same degree is necessarily shared by their kith and kin.
It is. It is because it is a very conscious decision that starts beforehand. So before the enrollment, before enrolling yourself for the test in the academy, or the short service program that is there, it is it may be out of plight that they are doing it, but there is a very big understanding at the part of the family that is there, that is present, the people who are married to them, they understand that nation comes first, and so it is again something where the understanding, the training is both. So being again, I'm a daughter of someone, I'm a granddaughter of someone who belonged to the armed forces, and he's fought two wars. He has also taken three bullets for the nation. So it is something that my father and his elder brother and their mom, like my grandmother, they were all prepared for it. They knew that they may not see a husband, they may not see a father come back from war. And that is where I come from personally. When this topic, when I'm talking about armed forces and personnel, so of course they're going to have a thinking in a very set way that on our guard, there is this event, abnormal event that has taken place. There's this tragedy that has taken place, and they will have that patriotic sentiment of providing that safety to the nation. So to take those steps in that manner, that we are there and we can provide safety to this nation, and that is how they are going to restore safety uh, to to an insecure nation right now. That we that sentiment is that is present, that we are unsafe. Coming back to people trying to move on. So I know there was this image of a woman who was married to an army officer who lost his life, and they'd been married only 1 week. And that is one of the stories that I read about.
Yes.
That was there. To comment on whether they move on later on in life or they do get married is again a very, it's complicated. It might just be that she also belongs to a background of military, and she understands the sacrifice, the life that was lost at a higher level. She must have seen it around when she would have grown up. Or the fact that she's a civilian and she doesn't understand it. It's a very personal decision. But again, even if she remarries, this is an event, this is a tragedy that will guide a lot of her conscious life. Even though it may, this tragedy from our bodily defense mechanism, it may get repressed, but it is something that you will never forget. The death of your spouse is something you at whatever age that is
But
is
I feel
something
that
that
it
is very
might
hard to
be
recover from.
it might be accurate to say that how every individual interprets and manifests those experiences can be absolute chalk and cheese depending on the individual
Yes.
disposition and conditioning of that particular person.
Yes. Very true.
Okay, let's conclude. I think we've had a very robust discussion and lots for both of us to do later in the day as well. You said many, many beautiful quotes. Your last one, if I remember correctly, by Tagore, spoke about humanity, and my hair raised on their ends because this, in any case, was haunting me and resounding through me from the time I saw a Kashmiri Muslim amongst a large crowd of his own community saying, "ये इंसानियत की बात है और इंसानियत पहले आनी चाहिए." And that is what I would find an appropriate note on which to pause, because it is really about humanity. It's very, very easy and natural even to get swept away and carried away in the emotion of the moment and lose perspective, rationale, logic. But we all need to guard against that. And the more clarity we bring and have, which is what sessions like these hopefully will do, we will be able to act decisively and maturely. So thank you very much. We hope that um, as a nation, we heal from this and we heal in the correct manner. Thank you.
Yes. So, as we are closing, I would like to say that as we honor the lives lost, we also honor the spirit that violence could not destroy. That is the spirit of solidarity, shared humanity, and the spirit of healing. Let us carry forward the memory of those we have lost. not by succumbing to fear or hatred, but by walking forward, thread by thread, weaving back our collective humanity. So that's where I'd like to end.
Absolutely. Very, very beautifully said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.